Good evening, and thank you very much for your patience. It's now 6:28. We apologize. We were in closed session discussing several issues, and there is no action to report after that closed session. Moving forward, the next item on the agenda is our Pledge of Allegiance. Councilwoman Riddell Harris, will you please lead us in the pledge?
Yes, please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic that stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Writing utensil. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is Mayor's commendations, proclamations, and acknowledgements. And we don't have anything formal on the agenda today, but I would like to take this opportunity to congratulate all of those that worked so hard to make the Family Fourth a wonderful event for our community. I know Jackie is here with the chamber. There were a number of sponsors that came up, hundreds of volunteers that really made the entire day a wonderful day for our community. And so thank you so very much. I'm glad to see that now in the budget, we will have a line item that's always there to help fund the fireworks display so that the chamber won't have to come and request it on an annual basis. That will always be there as part of the budget. So again, congratulations to everyone who volunteered and worked so very diligently on that celebration. It was wonderful. Next item on the agenda is the adoption of the agenda. Council members, without objection, I would like to continue item number 12. And this is the 1103 High Street lease with the Western States Trail Museum. We just have a little kink that we need to work out. So without objection, council members, I will remove that item. Are there any other concerns with the agenda as proposed? Any concerns on the public side? Hearing none, without objection, we'll consider the agenda approved as amended. That shall be the order. All right. Going to the next item on the agenda, our multi-paged agenda, is our consent agenda. We have a number of items on consent this evening, items 1 all the way to item 11. Council members, are there any items that you'd like to pull off consent at this time? Yes, Councilwoman Amara.
Item number 3 and 5.
Okay, item 3 and item 5. Council, any others?
Yeah, I'm going to pull the item 11.
All right, item 11. All right. I'd like to open this up to the public. Are there any requests to remove any items off the consent agenda at this time? Seeing none, no public comment. Madam Clerk, please call the roll on the adoption of the, I'd like to have a motion to adopt the amended consent agenda, please.
I'll move to adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Holmes. Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show that the consent agenda as amended has been adopted. We're going to move now to item number 3. This is safety concerns proposed in the no parking zone on Racetrack Street. Councilwoman Amara, you had questions on this item?
No, I don't really have questions. I just am very happy that they came to that resolution. I know that the traffic committee met many times. That is a big safety concern. We had an individual come to our council, and I'm very pleased with the recommendation. And I just wanted to voice that. I'm glad that we're taking care of this because I do feel that it was a real problem. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions for staff at this time? Any public comment on this item? I would just like to say, since it was pulled off consent, I'm pleased with the outcome as well. Council, without objection, I'd like to entertain a motion.
I'll move that we receive, review, and file the information regarding the safety concerns along Racetrack Street and the solution recommended by the traffic committee.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Holmes. Riddell Harris. Aye. Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye. Let the record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. Thank you very much, Menjel. Next item on the agenda is the annual bicycle and pedestrian fund claim for fiscal year 23-24. Councilwoman Amara.
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Mayor. Yes, with this one, I talked at length with Menjel this afternoon and with our city manager, and they answered a lot of my questions. And I guess this is mostly, I would like Menjel to maybe tell the public why we are putting in a claim of $195,000 for bike and pedestrian lanes. And then we're giving it right back to the county so that they can do a sidewalk gap up at Dry Creek Road. And then I will have something to say after that.
Absolutely. But I think to best convey this message to the council, first of all, Mangeldine, Public Works Manager, thanks for having me. I'd like to introduce my counterpart from PCTPA, Corey Peterson. So about 3 years ago, the city had committed these funds to the city. The city, Placer County, and other neighboring agencies had committed these funds to the Highway 49 pedestrian project. So these aren't funds that are necessarily new that the city is utilizing for this project. These were funds that were committed many years ago. The city still has in our kitty our $74,000 that's available to us for our bicycle and pedestrian needs.
Is that 74,000 a year?
So no, that's the 74,000. I think it's about 74,500. Don't quote me on that roughly. That is apportioned to us over a 5-year period.
Over 5 years.
Correct.
Okay. So, and again, this is what I have to say, and it has nothing to do with Menjel or our city. It's just a note to myself in that when we enter into agreements, I think there's room for negotiations. I wish that we had more of this money and it would come back to us rather than go, $200,000 for the county for a sidewalk that honestly, in my opinion, the Highway 49 sidewalks are not utilized. So I feel like, in the future, for me, I would like to be able to negotiate and try and work something where we could get in benefit. I feel like we're putting in a claim for 200,000 and we're doing it for the county or for, the Highway 49 project.
Oh, absolutely. And rest assured that the lion's share of these monies are coming from Placer County. The city only contributed a small portion of this. So I would say, yes, there's some city funds in here, but the lion's share of these funds are coming from Placer County.
And I think it's,
And as we discussed today, though, then I don't understand why we have to put in a claim for 200,000. Why don't they just keep the funds? Why does it go to us?
Yeah. So
I can't reconcile that.
No, it's fairly simple explanation. So does the city have to claim these funds? No, not necessarily. Placer County could be claiming these exact same funds, and these funds are allocated to the project. Because PCTPA isn't an agency like the city of Auburn, they may not be eligible to claim these funds. Corey, why don't you go ahead?
yeah,
absolutely.
let
Sure.
our PCTPA staff person.
Absolutely. I'm happy to explain. So the main reason is because the way that the TDA or the Transportation Development Act statute is written, PCTPA is not the way we read it may not be eligible to claim bicycle and pedestrian specific funds. So the reason so we basically came to the city and asked if they would be willing to claim it on our behalf and then return the funds back to PCTPA for use for the project, essentially.
Mhm. And just to clarify, it's a PCTPA funded project, and the sidewalk gap project is actually happening in Auburn. It's not
Yes.
Dry Creek. It's actually along over by Staples. That's
Well,
where
according to this, it's over at Dry Creek, it says.
The entire length of the project is from roughly Interstate 80 all the way up to Dry Creek Road, and there's
No,
various
I
different
understand.
sections.
and most of that's already been done. So the part that's really that's the next part to be done is the part
So I
that's in the
guess
city limits.
just to finish up,
Mhm.
why doesn't the county put in the claim? It benefits the
You would
county,
I think I can answer
You
that.
want- answer that?
It benefits the city.
Yeah. So
not Auburn.
the county could certainly put in this claim, but as the mayor mentioned, this portion of work that's actually happening is mostly happening within the city limits. So it just makes sense that the city would claim it.
Well, wait a minute. It's the gaps are outside the city limits, from what I read.
So the entirety of the project starts from Highway 80 here at 49 and
Yeah.
ends at Dry Creek Road. The majority of that project has already been completed. The portion of this money that's going to address this project is actually within city limits.
Yes. As the PCTPA rep, I agree with that. This is really the money that's going to be spent in the city of Auburn on that segment from
Full island.
I-80 all the way up to Elm,
Yes.
right? It's really that section.
Correct. So the county could claim it. Madam
But it's-
Councilwoman, but it just made sense that the city shows that, we're supportive of this project as we committed to these funds back in 2020.
Well, again, I hear what you're saying, and that answers my questions. But what I would also like to say is that, how many people have you seen ride their bicycle on 49? It just seems like the expenditure or I wish we had more of an opportunity to, and I voiced this before, some of the funds would have been nice to be able to use to have a safe bike lane, because people can't use that. It's just not safe.
So that's kind of the intent of this project, is to fill that gap so that we could start to utilize that area a little bit more.
So they will put in barriers that will actually make the bike lane safe? Is that?
That
what
is
you're-
not part of this current project, but that's always an opportunity for a future project.
Right. Okay. Well, then I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you very much. Appreciate that.
Yes.
Yeah,
Councilman
Madam
Black.
Mayor, I don't have a question. My only comment, to my colleague's point here is, unfortunately, it doesn't say that in the staff report that the money would be used within the city limits.
Yeah.
And of course, our portion of it, as you have said, is already done. And so I think this was a good dialogue to have that discussion, because I too, did not understand of why wouldn't the county apply if the work is done in the unincorporated. And so it is what it is, but appreciate the explanation.
Got a quick thing too.
Mhm.
Just for everyone's education, how much is left of this project? And after we're done with this project, then that agreement is gone and that money goes back to each of the respective agencies, correct?
So I'm not the project manager on this particular project. I don't know if you know for sure, Corey, how much of the project is actually remaining.
So right now we're kind of wrapping up the design and right-of-way phases, and we should be starting construction in probably early 2024, maybe springtime.
I
Depends
mean,
on,
with the entire, you've been doing filling the gap in the walkways for a while. When is that going?
right. So that construction would fill in the remaining gaps. So there'll
It's
be,
the last
It'll be
gap.
done at
yes,
the end of this. Okay.
yes. After that construction's done, there will be a continuous path on either side of the highway all the way between 80 and Dry Creek.
So then the agreement will be done for this particular project?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, thank you very much. Council, are there any additional questions at this time? Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to open this item up for public comment. Is there any public comment? Hearing none, I'll bring it back to the council. What's your pleasure on this item?
I'll go ahead and make a motion that by resolution, we authorize our Public Works Manager to submit the 23-24 Transportation Development Act bicycle and pedestrian claim to the Placer County Transportation Planning Agency for approval.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amara,
Yes.
Berlant,
Aye.
Holmes,
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
All right, let the record show the motion has been adopted unanimously. All right, the final item that's been removed from consent is item number 11. This is item Auburn Firefighters Association Local 410, 4110. IAFF, the MOU. Councilman Berlant, do you have?
Yeah,
questions
thank you,
on
Madam
this?
Mayor. I don't have a question. I just want to make a quick comment that I realize that we have several MOUs in front of us. And so, acknowledging that, but I just have to, in good conscience for myself, just voice that unfortunately to meet the ability for us to come to an agreement with our firefighters that are woefully underpaid. And so I'm glad to see us take action tonight. I have a lot of concern related to freezing of 4 positions. And I know the council knows that, but I just wanted to share that. I look forward to continued discussions on how we address that and how we continue to address making sure all of our employees are paid a fair wage relatably to the rest of the region. And I realize that all 5 of us agree on that, but I just wanted to voice my concern, though I will vote for this tonight, that my displeasure against the 4 vacant positions being frozen.
Thank you very much, Councilman Berlant. And as you know, I concur with you exactly. I concur with you. And for the record, I am going to do all that I can to find additional monies to bring back those 4 additional firefighter personnel. I think that it's critical that we staff our engines with 3 people on them. I understand the firefighters are supportive of the proposal, obviously before us tonight. And it is an unfortunate circumstance, but we are able to bring them up to at least a market wage, which we were so far below. But I will be working very diligently to try to identify sustainable funds to ensure that we can bring back those firefighters and not have those positions frozen. So I think for the purposes of the record, that will be something that, you know, when we're looking at projects to fund and new projects and so forth, that's always going to be in the back of my mind, whether or not those funds can be used to bring back our firefighters. So again, we're not laying any personnel off. We're simply freezing some vacancies that we have. So I want to make sure that's very clear. So thank you very much, Councilman Berlant. Are there any other comments or questions with regards to item number 11? Hearing none, I'll open this up to the public. Is there any public comment? Hearing no public comment, what is the pleasure of the council?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, now that I've spoken my piece, I will make a motion that by resolution, we adopt the memorandum of understanding between the Auburn Firefighters Association Local 4110 IFF and the City of Auburn for the period of July 1st, 2023 through June 30th, 2024, and authorize the city manager to sign on behalf of the city.
I'll second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none, Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Councilmember Amar.
Yes.
Berlant.
Aye.
Holmes.
Aye.
Riddell Harris.
Aye.
Mayor Dowden Calvillo.
Aye, let the record show that the motion has been adopted unanimously. And thank you very much to our chief negotiator. Great job, and great job to our unions as well. All right, next item on the agenda is public comment. This is an opportunity for any member of the public to address the council on items that are not on the agenda tonight. We cannot take action on said items, but we can refer them to staff for further discussion and potential consideration at a subsequent meeting. All right, public comment is hereby open. Is there any public comment? Madam Clerk, any public comment online?
There is not.
All right, seeing no public comment, I'm going to close public comment and go back to business. As you know, we have continued item number 12 to our next meeting. So the next item on the agenda is item 13. This is a presentation by Pioneer Community Energy. And we have Don Eckert here, who is the CEO of Pioneer. Thank you so much, Don. And this is not a new issue, of course. The council we've talked about this, but we're going to get some more information. So take it away.
All right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good evening, council members. City Manager, congratulations on your new position. And
So Don, just talking to your mic, push your mic closer.
okay, there you go. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
All
that's
right,
perfect.
great. So I got the unenviable task of talking about combos tonight, but we got a solution for you. So thank you for pulling up the presentation. If we can go to the next slide, please. So many of you are aware of the issues with SB 1383, and really this got on Pioneer's radar just based on feedback we were getting from our board members who are elected officials of the member agencies that we serve, of anxiety of how to be compliant. And you can see with those bullet points there's a very fast ramp up time to get to 100%. So this year we're looking at 30%. It ramps up to 65 and 24. And then you need to be 100% compliant in 25 and thereafter. There's 4 types of organic waste products that could comply, such as compost, mulch, renewable energy for anaerobic digestion is like methane from landfills. And then what we'll be talking about tonight is a solution we want to propose, which is the electricity produced from biomass compliant feedstock. So next slide, please. So in our efforts to try to find a solution through biomass, we talked to Cal Recycle, and really the most eligible solution out there was a power plant, Southern California, owned by Greenleaf. And what they've done is they have the materials that they're burning down there that qualify under Cal Recycle's rules, that for every megawatt hour that they're producing in energy, they're also receiving 1 attribute, which would be similar to, let's say, the wind turbine is producing 1 megawatt of energy, but it also gets 1 renewable energy certificate. This is kind of the same approach. And the reason that we're talking to you about this now is that on the second bullet point, there's about 200,000 tons of these attributes that are available. It wouldn't take long for a Los Angeles or Oakland or San Jose to put a lot of that under contract. So we were near first in line on this one to get the best pricing and best terms available and get this secured ahead of time. And the price that we're quoting right now is $32.50 per attribute. Depending on how many of our member agencies, and I'll cover that a little bit later, join this, we might get something at around $31. But anyway, that's for tonight's purposes, we'll assume the $32.50. Next slide, please. So Pioneer's role in this was to be the the negotiator. In this case, we negotiated on behalf of our member agencies. So this is an example where we used our JPA to the strength versus, let's say, Auburn or Loomis negotiating this on your own. You probably wouldn't get the best pricing and it would probably take a lot more time. A question that may come out of this is, why is the contract then between Auburn versus Pioneer Energy? And this was a decision that we had with our board. And the thought was, I want to separate ratepayer funds from being involved in this endeavor. Also, I probably have to hire an FTE just to manage this. And so it just made sense that we'll negotiate, then hand the contract off to the cities. And that also gives you a little more room to customize it to what you want in the contract. So next slide, please. Won't go through all these numbers, but just as an example of how the formulas work. So in this case, Auburn's 2022 usage is about 1.2 million kWh or kilowatt hours. The formula has it that you can have 650 kilowatt hours per ton that you can procure. So the maximum tons procurable to the next column over would be 1,869. But the target for 2023 for Auburn is 347. So you're in great shape in that you have plenty of room based upon your target. And then we used a price per ton of 3,250, and then the cost would be about 11,300. And then next slide. Same methodology here for 2024, except now you're moving up to 65% compliance. And the only thing I would also point out here is, like, for instance, if you look at El Dorado County or Loomis, they're actually not going to have, they can't procure enough of this to cover their needs. So in El Dorado County's case, for instance, we'll be at about 1,789 tons that they have to find a solution elsewhere beyond this solution. And then next slide, please. This would just be then the estimated tons for Auburn in 2025 at 100% and thereafter. And so if you add 23, 24, 25 together, when the contract is brought to you 2 weeks from now, you're looking at roughly around $60,000. Next slide. So we also did a cost comparison, and you can see that if you just look at the attributes at 3,250 and what's needed for Auburn, and this is just based on 2023 requirements, it'd be about 11,300. If you went out and bought that, and these are just estimates that we did on our own reconnaissance, and you look at the trucking, and we may be even light on the trucking estimate there. There's not a lot of difference financially between using the attributes and buying the compost and transporting it. I think the real issue for the city is going to be what to do with it after it's transported here. And so to put some perspective on that, next slide, please.
And just to clarify, it says on that last slide what the city is going to do with 208 tons of compost, but really our number for this year is 347 tons.
That's correct. Yes.
So we have 347 tons of compost we would have to manage.
Yeah. Thank you for pointing.
Which is,
So this gives you an idea of what 50 tons looks like. And the young lady in the photograph is standing on a platform. You have a beautiful city. In 2025, you need 1,000 tons. So there's like 20 to 25 of those piles laying around. Probably you don't want that. So that's why we're talking today. And next slide would be considerations. So in that last bullet, we talked to the staff. The last few months, they're well versed on this. We did say to every jurisdiction, look at your own situation and choose what's best for you. And so we have been talking to the staff, and we wouldn't be here today if they didn't support this. And then next slide is in our negotiations. We did talk to the plant about a notice of violation that they're dealing with. So just full disclosure with the Environmental Protection Agency. I think first thing we did was inform our board, as well as other interested parties, city managers, et cetera, on the issue. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't feel that this issue is going to be resolved, significantly reduced or resolved completely. And this really is from a prior compliance period. But the power plant over there has given me what their discussions that they're having and resolutions, and it looks like it's a reporting issue with data. But we did also talk to Cal Recycle. So this is still ongoing to be resolved. If this wasn't resolved, does this impact the solution? And the answer from Cal Recycle was it does not. So their focus is going to be the feedstock coming from eligible and permitted facilities. And they're looking at the feedstock rather than this violation. They also emphasize that they are They do not have regulatory oversight on the plant. Obviously, they don't encourage the plant getting a notice of violation, but this is not going to stop the deal. Also, from this, though, we also added language in the contract so that if there is a future notice of violation, that the city of Auburn would be informed immediately. And if there's not some sort of a reasonable resolution to that violation, that is an out in the contract for the city. And then next slide. So this is our last slide, and you'll see in the contract in a few weeks, the Greenleaf would prefer 5 years. I would tell you that I think 3 years is probably the right choice here. There's still a lot of moving parts 3 years from now, what this is going to look like. So I think that's a safe play for you. There's also, I think, a very important bullet point is that if the regulatory rules change in the term of this contract, that you can give the power plant 60 days notice and you're out of it. So there's really little risk there. Again, as we negotiated on behalf of all our member agencies, we got, I think, better pricing and better terms. There would be a fixed fee on the attorney side that we use to negotiate the contract. And so right now where we stand, we have 10 member agencies. 5 for sure are either close to finalizing this or have already signed the contract. We do have Placerville, I think, is waiting more to see what El Dorado County is going to do. And we do have a meeting next week with El Dorado County, and indications are they're going to move forward. And then the only 2 that I know of that are out of this would be Rockland and Placer County. And they're members of the Western Placer Waste Management Authority Board, and they're working out a solution with them, and that's fine with us. It just comes down to what's best for each agency. And again, this contract would need to be finalized by July 31st. That gives Greenleaf then, okay, who's in by July 31st? That finalizes the pricing and allows them to move forward as well. So I have, again, as I mentioned earlier, the urgency on this is we want to get this done before these attributes get bought out. I think it's low risk, and it's if not a permanent solution, at least it's a bridge for the city until you do find a permanent solution. With that, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Mr. City Manager, did you want to add anything to that presentation?
No, the only thing that I would add is that we're looking to, if council gives direction to bring this back, we would bring it back at the second meeting in July so we can enter that contract and be on time.
Thank you very much. So just for the council's benefit, Pioneer is offering this to us as a member agency. They don't have to do this. They just simply, we've been talking about SB 1383 compliance. Wes Heathcock, who was the city manager at Colfax and now is Loomis, and I both sit on the solid waste local task force. And so we've been talking about this, the 2 of us, and then we talked about this. There was this opportunity to buy credits that we heard about that on the solid waste local task force. So then we talked to Don about it. Is there any way we can, what we can do there? So then Pioneer went after it from that perspective, but really Pioneer gets nothing out of this. It's not something that they have to do. They simply are offering this as an opportunity for us. That's all. They don't make any money from it. It's just a nice benefit. We're not required to do it, but really it allows us to purchase credits instead of have to manage 347 tons of compost, which we have no place to store and no means by which to store, because compost is combustible. You have to have a sprinkler system in place. It has to be turned on a regular basis. You have to have staff there so that when people come to pick up the compost. So there's, this, even if this is just a bridge for 3 years to come up with a better solution, we do have to have compliance right away. So I think that I appreciate very much Pioneer coming forward with this proposal. And I know that many of the other jurisdictions, our member agencies, are participating as well. We really do appreciate all that Pioneer has done to help us get to this point. And I'll open it up for questions. Are there questions by the council? Seeing no questions, any public comment? Hearing none. If really this is just direction, then Mr. City Manager?
Comment?
Yes, absolutely.
I didn't have any questions. But
Oh, yes, I'll bring it back for comments then, please.
Thank you. I just felt a need to comment on the frustration that I have with this whole situation that we're put in. this is basically just a tax on compost that the cities are having to pay. The regulatory agencies know that we don't have the ability to deal with that level of compost. They don't expect us to. They just want us to pay money to support renewable energy projects. And that's why they gave us the out. That's what they did with greenhouse gas emissions. That's what they did with RPS. That's what they've done with LCFS credits. And this is just another way of taxing without taxing. And so that's really frustrating to me, especially since they made it the way that they designed the rule. It doesn't matter if we reduce the amount of compost or organics that are made in your particular jurisdiction, you still have to buy into and pay for this product that you can't do anything with.
And it's based on per capita.
Yeah, it's
So
based
it's
on per capita.
absolutely not even based on the amount of material that's disposed of. It's strictly on per capita.
So if we came up with the best compost product, process ever in Auburn and didn't have anything that went to the waste facilities, we would still have to buy it back
That's
from
right.
them. And that just proves that this isn't made, this ruling isn't made to actually reduce the amount of organics coming from a jurisdiction. It's simply there to create a funding source. And so that's why I'm incredibly frustrated with this whole situation. I appreciate Pioneer and their willingness to help us to come up with a solution, because it's not a great situation. And they saw that their members were all having the same need. And that's the point of joint agencies, and for us to kind of work together to get those economies of scale. And so I really appreciate that. I do think that the 3-year term makes the most sense, because these markets change really quickly. LCFS credits went from $200 a credit to $60 a credit within a year or two.
Mhm.
And so we just don't know what's going to happen with this. They could change all the rules and regulations tomorrow. We just don't know. So I appreciate the help that we're getting. I'm hoping that we can find another solution than just paying a company in Southern California our money. So that way we don't have to take a bunch of organics that they never really intended us to take in the first place. I'd be curious to find out, since we're paying all this money, where are all the organics that we're not taking now going to go? So that's a good question that I would like to have for them as well. So anyway, this is one of my least favorite topics, and I appreciate you coming, but I really think that there's a better way of doing this. And hopefully we as a council can lobby to at least make it based on what we produce and come up with a way of, as a community, reducing our organics that we produce as a community and not having to participate in this whole taxation process, essentially. Thank you.
Thank you. I echo your comments. And as a member of the board for the League of Cities, we are working very diligently trying to get something changed, at the state level and working with CalRecycle. But so far we haven't been successful, but we're absolutely, all the cities are on board. We're all in the same situation, unless you're a very, very small city of like 2,000. I think they're exempt. And what's really ironic about that is that the really small cities are usually the really rural cities, the cities that might have space to have compost. But in any event, so thank you very much. Other comments by the council? Okay, I already asked for public comment. What's the pleasure of the council? It looks like at this point, you're looking for a direction.
Just direction to bring the contract back for council approval at the next
Okay,
meeting.
so is there any objection to directing staff to bring the contract back for ratification at our next meeting?
A 3-year contract? Is that what we're
Yes,
asking
a
for?
3-year contract. All right, there's no objection. So you have your direction, and we'll see you at the next meeting with a contract. Thank you again very much, Don. Appreciate your efforts very much. All right, next item on the agenda is an update from Genevieve Marsh, Design Group, on the first phase of the form-based code project.
Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, members of the council. Jonathan Wright, Community and Economic Development Director. Just like to give you a little background for those who weren't listening, weren't present, our
Weren't listening.
prior meetings.
Oh,
I'm sorry, not council members. I was referring to the public
sorry.
or
I
or the public at large that's out there watching this either now or later. So you recall about 2 years ago, we did an update of our housing element. That housing element necessitated that we meet some housing requirements. And one of the focus goals that we had at the time was, how do we figure out how we get more residential uses into our downtown area and our old town area, which at the time was specifically prohibited. So instead of doing just a short turnaround, let's just put residential development into our historic old town and downtown. We decided we would do this better. We would look at it as an infill project, knowing that we don't have a whole lot of developable greenfields out there to put housing. This was a creative way to get housing in our old town, downtown, and do some revitalization work. So we came up with the concept of a form-based code. You fast forward about, it was a year and 7 months ago, we floated an RFP to find a consulting agency that would help us, or firm that would help us go through this process. After much back and forth, trying to find companies that were interested, we actually found one right in our own backyard. So in working with Genevieve Marsh Design Group and RGS, Regional Government Services, we have now been able to pair this together into a 2-phase project. We are coming towards the end of the first phase. And so this is your second or third time presenting to the council updates? Second time. So just trying to keep the council apprised as we go along here. And then at the end, we're going to have a big open house that has a lot more information, but we want to make sure we're as transparent in this process as possible and really letting everybody know where we are as we move through it. So Genevieve Marsh.
Thank you, Mr. Wright. Good evening, council members and Madam Mayor. I'm happy to be back here this evening. I am Genevieve Marsh of Genevieve Marsh Design Group, and I'm representing the Imagine Auburn project team who's been working on your form-based code. Last time I was here, we reviewed our documentation phase where our team went all over the project area, measuring buildings and blocks to create the architectural DNA strands present in our commercial core. And tonight I want to review with you the outreach phase. My goal is to familiarize you with the community's contribution to the substance of the form-based code and open that up for commentary from you and the public while it's still in a malleable state. And at the end of the summer, you will receive full documentation to port through for the details. Next slide, please. Oh. Oh, and it's got a laser too. That's nice. So tonight's presentation has two parts. We're going to review the community's feedback and also look at the regulation structure we're developing to support that vision. We had an outstanding level of engagement in the outreach phase, and I'd like to thank the members of the Planning Commission, City Council, and city staff for supporting Imagine Auburn and showing up and providing feedback. And I would also like to thank the community members of Auburn who participated in our outreach activities. Our team was deeply humbled by the turnout of the residents and stakeholders, willing to take the time to bring their ideas to the table and work them through with people of other perspectives. And we are truly appreciative of their efforts. As a reminder, I have a picture of the project area up on the screen. It's from I-80 to High Street, from Hoffman Avenue to Sacramento Street. That encompasses Old Town and Downtown and the Almond Heights neighborhood. And 4 neighborhoods abut it. And in several cases, the project area is the primary entrance and exit for those neighborhoods to the rest of the world. We engaged approximately 300 community members in envisioning the future of Auburn, which translates to 530 hours of high-quality brainstorming as a community. We worked hard to reach a wide swath of demographics, pivoting throughout the outreach series to balance representation. 2 pivots of note include we added an extra workshop for teenagers at Placer High School and an after-hours workshop for working professionals under the age of 40. They needed an after-hours opportunity. So, since the beginning, the city has had 2 primary goals for this project. 1, to develop a strategy to encourage infill development to maximize the limited buildable land inventory. And 2, to develop a strategy to increase housing opportunities. The outreach process has dived deep into these goals and examined them from a variety of viewpoints with the community and created a vision of Auburn's future that addresses them. Up on the screen here, you can see a sequence of the methods we used to evolve these conversations, starting with surveys and interviews, and using that to inform a workshop series that began by exploring the dynamics at play and then working with community solutions on a map, and then envisioning how all these solutions may come together to form a cohesive vision. So I really am looking forward to showing you the journey. This is the first workshop, and here everybody is exploring opportunities and challenges through themes of lifestyle, character, and building a future at Old Town Pizza in the fairgrounds. We oscillated between individual, small, and whole group activities to get deep, enriching dialogue going on, but between people that didn't previously know each other, and advance what the different parts of these themes mean specifically for Auburn. And we pulled those themes from our interviews and survey, of course. And on a high level, we learned that the chief priorities for community members are creating a walkable lifestyle and maintaining Auburn's character. Any form-based code solution must incorporate these to appeal to the public. So, the community can imagine the character being maintained with the main commercial area growing. The scale of growth that is seen as acceptable to most is buildings mostly 3 stories in the commercial core, and residential areas growing more into the 2-story range over the next 50 years. The white dots up here represent the current level of building size, and then green represents what our workshop indicated was likely unacceptable level of additional growth. And this we see as very positive because it represents the potential for acceptable growth throughout the project area. We also learned that community members are most excited about increasing housing through several housing types: apartments above retail, ADUs, and co-housing projects were the top 3. And these have a nice range of intensities that work well with the variations throughout the project area. Allowing residential uses in commercial areas and prioritizing civic spaces over more parking lots would enhance walkable lifestyle as well. Community members were most displeased with the existing large freestanding contemporary era buildings. These buildings are products of the current zoning code and break the historic era building pattern. The FBC has the potential to evolve this building typology so that future large freestanding buildings blend in more effectively. To maintain character, the community told us the importance of making it easier to renovate existing buildings is at the forefront. They perceive several issues that currently discourage these kinds of projects. The regulations are perceived as too laborious for most people to figure out. The permit process is seen as having too much subjectivity, which leads to unpleasant surprises and the fear of unpleasant surprises. These concerns are amplified when it comes to historic buildings, as there's a lack of clarity about what is historic and what that entails. Community proposed solutions include simplifying regulations in the permit process, as well as supporting building owners to create historically appropriate designs. They'd like to see historic preservation be rewarded, as everyone likes the results, but it often entails a labor of love for the owner. So this is a taste of the feedback from Workshop 1, which we transformed into building concepts for a board game in Workshop 2 to enable the community to test out their ideas on a site plan. So here's the community playing the board game at the Auburn Public Library. The goal was to create a growth scenario that prioritized a walkable lifestyle for people of all ages. Players grappled with walkability and town character as they added new dwelling units, businesses, and amenities to a map, and evaluating them as a team. And here's a close-up on what the game board and playing pieces looked like. Players responded to a series of tasks that asked them to select and play game pieces. They could play pieces inside the project area or outside the project area. And we were able to take the results of the board game to study preferences, locations, and effectiveness of varying playing pieces. And here's what we found players put in the project area. Looking at commercial, we found community members deploying it throughout, with major tenants along primary streets and active uses such as food establishments scattered along primary and secondary streets, even in residential areas. And from maps like this, the project team can infer appropriate building types from this map that would match appropriate scale and desired use. To support pedestrian activity in key commercial areas, players considered different street amenity upgrades, such as outdoor dining, nightlife blocks, and public squares to be most likely effective to increasing street life. The top nodes identified include Washington Street in Old Town, huge cluster, dots, and North Lincoln Way, and additionally improvements to the Elm High intersection and East Street behind Josephine's were creative ideas to support the establishment of new walkable commercial nodes to help with connection from north to south. Players also incorporated residential uses throughout the project area. Even in the current C2 zone, the most dense housing types were clustered on Lower High Street near the Fairgrounds entrance and Harrison Avenue and in Almond Heights. The medium density housing types were found throughout the project area, and the smaller housing types such as single family homes and duplexes were preferred in existing residential zones and not popular in the heart of commercial activities. To support the expansion of residential uses, we asked players to locate green space in such a way as to convenience as many households as possible. We found that greens, parklets, and playgrounds were all popular. The top locations included establishing a green space for the Almond Heights neighborhood, enhancing the Brewery Lane open space as a parklet playground, and adding a playground in the High Street Harrison Avenue area. We also asked people to consider where a parking garage would be most convenient if one was ever necessary. Players prioritized 3 existing public lots: the Farmers Market lot, the Central Square lot, and the Magnolia Street lot. The project team's next step was to take all of these observations and collate them to create a draft of the regulation areas within the form-based code with vision boards for each area. Collectively, these vision boards summarize what we've heard as the community's vision for Auburn's future that prioritize infill development and housing opportunity. So here we are at the Station Public House, and the community's reviewing our very large vision boards. It was an open house format with focus groups on specific topics to make sure that we're continuing to get a cycle of discussion to advance the topics. Attendees interacted with the boards through sticky note comments and indicating satisfaction levels with dot stickers. Overall, people were satisfied to very satisfied with the Transect vision boards. We also received some excellent feedback to identify points in need of refinement and suggestions on how to do that. So let's take a look at these vision boards now. At the highest level, the form-based code would establish 3 new regulating zones, 1 for each transect. The proposed transect map is on the right, and we have a different color representing each zone. The regulations would refine, clarify, and modernize the zoning throughout this project area, and the transects are designed to work together to create a smooth blend from the busiest streets in the town center to the adjacent quiet neighborhoods. The town center transect, the red one, is the most intense as it reestablishes the historic era growth pattern beloved in Old Town and still present on Upper Lincoln Way, while the T4 and T3 zones create 2 grades of transition towards the quiet residential areas. Now, the boundaries of these zones are based on the existing zoning map and the existing transect map. The boundaries were adjusted of each zone were adjusted to accommodate the community's growth projection and provide equal opportunity to Old Town and downtown moving forward. T5 is used to connect the main areas of downtown and Old Town, which sets the stage for future buildings to facilitate pedestrian flow between Old Town and downtown. T4 establishes a uniform perimeter around T5, which includes completing the intensity level along the Lincoln-Sacramento Street High Street loop. T3 preserves the character of the existing neighborhoods by addressing compatibility issues and extends a few walkable community features into the neighborhood fringe. So let's look at the town center. The community imagines walking or biking through the town center as a lively, exciting, and safe experience. It's designed for easy and enjoyable pedestrian, bike, and transit activity, flanked with blocks of attached buildings with neighborhoods serving retail, food, and services on the ground floor and housing options above. New artisanal industrial uses add character, culture, and diversity to businesses along the street front. And most buildings are built up to back of sidewalk, with exceptions for institutional and large buildings that have civic spaces in front. Civic spaces, wide sidewalks, street trees, and even mid-block shortcuts called paseos enhance enjoyment of exploring on foot. Sidewalk cafes, plazas, and pocket parks provide outdoor living rooms, and there's always something new to discover in this vibrant, dense, mixed-use environment. There we go. Now let's look at the blending zone, T4, which we're calling neighborhood commercial. If you have a suggestion for a cooler name, we would love one. The community is imagining this zone as a walkable urban neighborhood that's mixing commercial and residential options all within a short walk. Most buildings are imagined as 3 stories. Some are mixed use and others aren't. It mixes in office mansions and small apartment buildings to be compatible with the existing historically significant buildings. The streets have street parking, curbs, and sidewalks. And there's a balance between the buildings and landscaping with setbacks to ensure privacy and create a calmer feel. You'll see plenty of galleries, storefronts, and stoops intermixed with residential and commercial front yards, forecourts and terraces, and a few outdoor public gathering places like terraced forecourts, sidewalk cafes, pocket parks, neighborhood park, nature paseo. And the T3 neighborhood zone is imagined as a relaxed and walkable living environment where you'll find medium and low intensity housing options and also corner neighborhood retail, such as cafes and grocers, all within easy walking distance. Most of the buildings are 2 stories tall and setbacks encourage front yards and landscaping. As the area is mostly single-family homes, standards address converting them into office spaces or multiple dwelling units while maintaining the character. Frontages include front yards, porches and stoops. Commercial porches, neighborhood parks, and nature paseos complete this living atmosphere. So, as you can see, this is a concrete vision that has a lot of richness to it. And we see where we've ended up as a yes and vision that's providing ample opportunity to fulfill the city's goals of increasing infill and housing, as well as enhancing the community's priorities of character and walkability. The project team is currently taking that vision and writing it into the next deliverable, which is the form-based code public review draft, which is on schedule to share in September. And as we do that, we keep going back and back to the feedback that we've gotten. And one of the things that I find very beautiful is this vision statement, which summarizes the priorities. More self-sustaining Auburn, where citizens feel connected to nature, historic charm, and each other. So when you see that in the public review draft, we will feel successful. Thank you. Are there any questions?
I wanted just to clarify, you said that the proposal, the form-based code proposal will be back to us in September?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. All right, I will open this up for questions or comments from the council members at this time. Any questions or comments? Yes, Councilman Berlant.
Yeah, I'll just, I don't have any questions. I'll just make a comment. Thank you very much for the update. And actually, there were some insights that I found interesting, just based on our own demographics of the participation. And I don't know how that changes, changes the results at all, but just, the both age demographics. And I think the thing that really stood out to me, which I was not aware of, by the way, but I really appreciate that you added an additional opportunity for folks, because what I did see was that the number of the age range between really 30 and under 50 was very, 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 very small. Even not, it wasn't proportional to our community. But I appreciate you working to do that outreach. I also appreciate getting the students impact, because they're the ones going to be sitting up here and in the audience, living with the decisions that we make as well. And so I'm just curious if you think that the energy and the feedback that you got was sufficient to really drive, kind of the decisions and the recommendations you're going to be bringing back for us in a couple of months. So I guess that really turned into a question. Sorry.
No
Thank you for your
problem.
comment question. I feel that at this point, with the amount of depth and breadth of feedback that we've received from the community and represented to them and discussed in community several times, that we have a solid, high-level vision to implement. I think that there will be more discussion on some of the finer points of how we achieve these specific things. But from our exit polling, the vision overall is quite acceptable to the community, with a lot of excitement being generated about it. And we hope to continue to help bring that energy to working out the smaller details.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I appreciate that. I said I had no questions. Here's the second question for you. Is it possible the workshop results, so you have the dots that kind of tell us, I haven't had a full chance, obviously, we just got this evening to really digest it. Is it possible though to see those maps maybe be a little larger and be color coordinated just a little differently, so that we can clearly see, where people want to put small grocery compared to office services? Right now, they're the same color, they just have different letters, but when they stack on top of each other, but I there's just a lot of insight that I know you're gaining from it, but I would be interested, at least myself, in being able to see each of those results somehow with different markings, so that was easier to tell where people were amenable to the different the different legends.
Legal size papers.
Yeah, something. Again, this is great and it was very helpful, but it is a very small area on half a sheet with the same color. But it's a lot of great insight. I look forward to going through it a little bit, more. And so maybe we might think about an opportunity of how, if we have questions after we really dive through the results and again, kind of the entry level demographics. I don't know, Jonathan, if that would be you, or because what I hear is that you're not coming back to us likely until September to make the recommendations. And so I guess I would just asked to think about, is there one more opportunity for us to ask additional questions after we really can dive into the results document, which, by the way, is fantastic. It's very well laid out.
And I would recommend that if council members do have questions or comments, they'd like to relay them to Jonathan, then who can get them to you. I liken this to the branding exercise that we've all had an opportunity to participate in that process. And so if we, want to have our own opportunity to participate, which we should, then we could do that as well. And I would just encourage us to reach out to Jonathan. Is that acceptable? Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And I guess just to conclude, there may be members of the community, though, that also, just looking at this tonight may have additional questions. So just, I guess, something to think about is there one more opportunity to review it? I obviously, for us council, we have that connection, but there's a lot of really good things that are going to make some pretty major likely decisions based on the potential map. So
Are
just
you
something for you to
suggesting
consider.
that we maybe have one more?
I don't know what that looks like. If
Okay.
you're back here with one more follow-up, if there's one more workshop, I'm not trying to give more work, but I just think there's one more feedback loop that probably needs to be added to this process. Not that you haven't done significant outreach, because again, there's so much in here that hasn't yet been unpacked. So
We could,
something
and-
to consider.
And we could do, maybe an off council meeting night, like a town hall meeting, if you will. That might be something we can talk with staff about that. If there's an opportunity just to solicit additional public comment now that this has been released and people will have an opportunity to digest it. So maybe just adding like a little town hall meeting might be what we're looking for.
Yeah.
That's just the only item on
Yeah.
the agenda.
Yeah, I'd be
Whoever wants to
supportive
come could come, and, council members we would need to have a quorum. So that wouldn't be something that's.
Especially right before maybe the September.
Yeah,
meeting
so
where we
maybe
have-
in, mid-August or something, not when I'm in Chamonix, please, but, so-
Yeah. Madam Mayor, that's my question. Genevieve, thank you. Nice job.
So we will be producing a postcard to be sent out to all of the property owners in the project area to help them connect with this next version of what we're coming out with online in an effective way to help pair with any in-person
Sure.
town hall. We found that we kind of have to do in-person and digital together throughout the process in order to help reach people who are
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yeah, thank you.
not hanging out.
Yes.
Thank you so much for the information. And again, I concur with Councilman Berlant. I'd like to go over this in a lot more detail too. But it is hard to digest. It's a whole different vocabulary. And so my comment and question, I'm sure you probably concur, was a lot of your meetings just education for people? Was that some of it? I mean, I know when I talk about form-based code, everybody goes, what does that mean? And what are you doing? And that sounds dangerous and scary. And was a lot of it involved education?
Well, the majority of our workshops were activity-based in terms of time rather than lecturing on what a form-based code is in great detail. We started each of our workshop by explaining what a form-based code is, why that has been selected as the type of code update, and the opportunities present with that, and then making the language very very simple so that everybody could participate in it. So that's why we started with themes that we heard from the interviews that kept reoccurring as important themes. And we discussed those in community. And then we thought about those as actual building projects that you would put on a map. And what happens when you put multiple of that idea on the map? Because that's what form-based code does. It's not a one-off single parcel solution. So that people could actually exercise some urban planning in a format that's accessible and not overly technical. And then the final workshop is where we started presenting all of that in a form-based code style to start introducing that more technical component, but still try to show how all the pieces come together. Because when this long document hits the internet and people's desks, we want them to feel comfortable with it and able to engage with it, not just overburdened by.
That's excellent. So I guess I had a question. I know like in the branding, they made cold calls, so they got a lot more input. but it's not something you can really do. It sounds like you have to explain and be more interactive. Is that a correct statement?
We did not do cold calls in the sense of like a phone survey,
Yeah.
but we did do a lot of reaching out to people beyond our team's immediate network and secondary network to try to spread this as far as possible through a lot of posters throughout the whole project area designed to target different demographics specifically, and working with the people that we interviewed in the first phase that were kind of splattered throughout the project area to reach more of their connections, and the art in the art park to help advertise it. And we have put a lot of effort into getting this out to as many people as possible and making them feel welcome to participate. So we didn't do a phone survey, but we did do a digital.
No, and I'm not
survey.
criticizing you. I'm trying to understand your format and why, you did what you did, which is important to do it. The process that you did sounds very intense
Inviting.
and inviting, as well as, really educational, I think. So thank you. I really appreciate it. Excellent.
Thank you, Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you for this process. I think this is really beneficial work that we got out, and you've been spending a lot of time on this. And so I really appreciate you and the rest of your team. I was able to go to the library and participate in the board game. Okay. They were excited about it too. So I got to participate in the board game, and that was just really interesting and really fun. And even though there weren't as diverse of a population at the meeting, I liked the way that you created personas for everyone in the board game. So they weren't representing necessarily themselves. They were representing a young family with kids who just moved here, or somebody who works from home. And so it was nice because people in the room weren't necessarily thinking about what's best for them. They were thinking about what's best for different members of the community and how they could, find a place that they'd want to live there, or find a place to have a park and where it would be convenient. And so I think it really helped everyone to kind of work together to make a community that's best for all types of people, even though we couldn't necessarily get it as diverse as we wanted to. And so I really just wanted to say that I appreciate the way that you worked to make sure that everyone was represented in the process, even if everyone in the same percentages couldn't make it to those. So that was really great. And the other thing is I was asked during the meeting, can we get a copy of the board game? That was really cool.
Oh, there we go.
Got a really cool, they set it all up. It has a whole map of the city. You got to pick where you wanted to live and do different things. It was really nice. So
Would you all like to play it?
There we go. The
it
town
was
hall
really
meeting.
fun, I have to say. They did a really nice job. So anyway, I just want to say I appreciate it. I know many people who gave me very positive feedback. It felt very inclusive process, and they were very excited about moving forward and being part of the process of figuring out what the future of Auburn looks like, because it's important to make sure everyone feels like they had the opportunity to have a say and to have buy-in to this new vision. And I think that you provided that. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councilman Holmes.
Yes, I was struck by the historic charm of the city. And I have a little bit of concern about, a lot of the people who come to visit Auburn come because of the charm of the city and the historic buildings and so forth. And we have a lot of buildings that are on the National Register of Historic Places. And so I would caution to be careful about that, because if you try to change the facade on a building like that, you run into trouble. So, but I'm anxious to see more in depth as things move along, what recommendations will be.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councilman. Yes, of course, I'm grateful to see that the historic charm is in there. That's something that I don't want to lose as well. I think it's very important to Auburn, and so doing something that will allow us to maximize infill development, but keep that historical charm integrity there, then I think is certainly a bonus. And yeah, I echo the comments from my colleagues. I appreciate the amount of work that you've put into this process and your efforts to ensure that there's some diversity that's represented here in this process. And so thank you very much for that. Looking forward to digesting this a little bit further as well, and seeing what your recommendations are. And then we'll get with staff to determine whether or not we have a town hall meeting to further allow for public comment, now that this document is out into the public, and give people an opportunity to comment on if they have any comments. But thank you so much for this, and really do appreciate it greatly. Are there any additional comments or questions at this point? This is not an action item. It's just simply, yes, I will ask for public comment. It is simply receiving the presentation, but regardless, I will go ahead and open it up for public comment if there's public comment on this item. Yes, we do have public comment.
Hi, my name's Connie Brocker. This is my first time up here speaking, so I'm. Thank you, Council and Madam Mayor. I appreciate what you have done and how extensive your work has been. But I have lived in Auburn since '66, and I have to say that I'm taken aback by the drastic changes that this would bring to Auburn. And it reminds me of one of the 15-minute cities that I've been hearing about. I don't know if you've heard about those, but it's compiling everyone into this sardine can. And I know a lot of people that we like our rural areas. I live in South Auburn, but I grew up right downtown on Cherry Avenue. And I used to walk Auburn, and Auburn is quaint. It is a beautiful place. And I just think that trying to bring in 3-story, even 2-story buildings, there's a few that accessorize Auburn, and I think are appreciated and appropriate. But if we bring in too many, it is going to be overdone. For instance, when we do the fireworks or any of the holidays, parades, can you imagine how hard it's going to be to walk downtown? Or we're going to be like, there won't be room to walk. There will be so many people. So I know cities always want to grow in many ways, but I have major concerns about this. I really liked what Councilman Berlant and Councilman Amara said about, I was sitting out here, so I didn't get any extra paperwork other than what was up on the screen. But it was very shocking to me. So I guess that's all. I just wanted to comment.
Thank you very much for your comments. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Michael Murphy, local resident. Well, I'm glad you're proceeding with this. As an architect, I consider myself a form-based designer, and I can point to Auburn Hotel. I can making it a 3rd story, different buildings around, new buildings, old buildings. So a couple of things I think might be missing in making your analysis. What Mr. Berlant, what Sandra said was it's very hard to know what's going on unless you have an exhibit. It seems to me the city ought to make a location, either a central hallway or maybe open up the old city hall, or someplace where we can get larger exhibits on the wall for somebody who actually can look at these exhibits and not look at them in a little piece of shrunken down paper. It's something we always learned in school when we were making a presentation to make it available to everybody. And that's one thing that I would recommend, is to get that out in the next month or two, if possible. The other thing is knowing who you've given this information to. I don't know, have you given it to the Planning Commission? Have you given it to the Historical Design Review Committee? Have you had this exhibit given to Rotary? Have you, all the things that have put the pieces of town together that I know of since I've moved up here 40 years ago, are very important, that you can build a little bit of consensus of what's going on. There's things that I don't know that you have much control over. Can you take over all these derelict buildings that have owners and maybe offer them a little stipend or something to do something? Can you take their building away, eminent domain, and the good of the community? There's things like that that really should be discussed. That's the reality. You have, like, you go in Old Town, you have a couple buildings in the corners and things like that are abandoned. You have areas in Old Town that is just sad they haven't been developed. You had same thing downtown. I also am a business owner in the center of town, and I noticed that it doesn't have the I don't know, the connections to put everything together for a successful business, and identifying that with the chamber, that type of thing. Last thing is traffic. You want pedestrian accessibility. You want to have all this nice fuzzy stuff. And when I was on the Main Street Commission, and when I was on different commissions, we put together kind of interesting art pieces along the sequence of avenues, so that people would go from, like, the boxes. We did all the colored boxes and things to get people interested. All those ideas are out there, and they've been gone through and then forgotten, and gone through and forgotten. So I would make sure you have your Arts Commission talk to putting this form-based architecture in solutions. It may not all be architecture. It may not all be a big form to make high density, like she was talking about. The other thing is the connection between pedestrians and vehicles. There are a few places that are speedways that divide your community, Old Town and downtown, completely in half. There's a 2-lane road there, a 4-lane road that was put in for a dam access. Well, we don't have a dam. I don't know why it has to maintain 4 lanes. Why don't we turn one of the lane on the right side into parking? And slow down traffic. It's a known traffic slow down to have a little more parking along the road. So there are some avenues like that over and above form-based, if you're trying to make a warm and fuzzy place to enjoy and to go from one place to another, it ought to be taken in consideration when you're doing this. I don't think filling in some of the atmosphere with a little higher buildings than that is really a total solution. And having the historical aspect of it, like Mike talked about, is something that we already have a historic guidelines that show details and things that can be referred to. If you had that put in the presentation that was shown to people and say, hey, here's a nice looking building, these are some of the details we'd like you to use, it would make it a better guideline for those of us who have to provide some solutions to this community. So I think that it can be a little broader and a little more focused, and it has to be seen. For me to look at those slides, I can't critique it. Just can't critique it. I can't get close enough to it. You put it on a 20 by 30 board sequentially, and put it where people can look at it and adjust the colors so that they're a little more expressive and easy to understand, you might get that kind of input. Lastly, I don't know how many total people of the 300 lots, how many people turned out for the different meetings, whether there are 20 of them or whether all 300 came out. It concerns all their land, and there are 300 areas with 300 lots within the space. Well, other than those short observations, any questions for me?
No. Thank you for your comments.
Thank you.
And I just want to remind the public that we have a 3-minute time span for comments. So
Hi, good evening, Kelly Davis. I'm a resident here. I just wanted to say thank you for doing this. I had the privilege of attending all 3 of the workshops, and I did skew the demographic a little bit, but it was nice to participate. And the after hours one was especially nice because I was able to drag some friends in that lived locally, and they just expressed how much they enjoyed being involved. And so I'd say any additional research or like, outreach could be, thrown on social media and thrown on places where people with families. It's a huge endeavor to find childcare and to come, even, down to City Hall to look at presentations. So anything that can be distributed virtually on Facebook, on Instagram, I think would be really valuable because personally, I have a lot of friends who want to be involved, and, we're inheriting Auburn. Our kids are inheriting Auburn. I love the idea of if I'm 80 and I'm here, I might be able to get a little apartment in downtown, so that the density makes me excited because I might not want to stay in my house forever, or my kids might want to come back and, be in a smaller house or be in an apartment. And I think that would give a lot to Auburn. So thank you. And don't forget about us people with kids. Yeah. Thanks.
yes, those of us with children, with minors. I think that I liked the idea of having that additional public comment. As I mentioned, Councilman Berlant, that I think, we will strive to have a town hall meeting. And at that town hall meeting, I think it would be a great idea to have the larger exhibits available to the public. And, I would kind of liken it to the format that we used when ASRA updated its general plan. If you'll recall, council, that were here at that time. They had several, stations that showed the different layers and so forth of the proposed development within the park itself, to have that available so that people can go up and look and talk and ask questions and so forth. So it wouldn't really be so much as a formal meeting as it would be more of that, kind of an introduction, if you will, and then allow the folks to go around and to ask questions and provide input and do something like that.
I would definitely agree with that. I like the idea of the exhibit. I think 3D would be wonderful, but anything.
But at least on foam core board,
Yeah,
it's bigger, so that especially for those of us that our eyes are not as.
And if it could be a little bit ahead of time, that would be wonderful too.
Yeah.
Have it. I like the idea of putting it in the hall.
I like that idea, but I also think that it's a valid point that not a lot of us can make it in to look at that, or maybe can't make it in on an evening. So having either a video or some kind of narrated slides or something, so that way
social media,
there's
absolutely.
accessible to people who can't make it in. I think that's
And
important.
I was just going to say too, that I wanted to ask our city clerk to make sure that the presentation that was given tonight is available online as well. I'm not sure it's online, but let's go ahead and make that available online. But and again, just making it so that it's a little easier for us to really dissect. And there are a lot of different colors. There's a lot of information there. It's great. But for some of us that I think we might appreciate just having a little bit more, maybe not as detailed, but maybe just overlapping. They're so overlapping.
Visual.
Yeah. So
One more.
we can do that. Yes.
Sure. It might be nice if there could be an outdoor exhibit or like a day that they're out by Tango or in the city square, just with a pop-up where people are walking. And I know you had the QR code, somewhere that they could send a question or just see it after hours or on the weekend when families are out or rec park, like somewhere that people are going with their kids and would have eyes on it.
All right. Any additional public comment on this item? Hearing none, this was just an update, so we don't have to take any action on this item. So we're going to move ahead to the next item on the agenda, which is our city manager report.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So a couple things. We'll be bringing back the remaining MOU, which is the ASPA at our next meeting, along with a wage and benefit resolution for the confidential and unrepresented employees. That'll wrap up the actual employee MOU stuff. I'm continuing on with this kind of fire hose of learning about city issues and meeting people. So just all the issues surrounding the city. So one of those that I've was able to talk to Gary about over breakfast at Edelweiss the other day was the closed landfill. So that was pretty eye-opening, and we'll start looking at that a little bit more in depth. Also had a meeting with the folks from Collectron and Councilmember Riddell Harris. So that was interesting. So we'll be figuring out what's going on with that. I was able to speak at the Lions Club breakfast last week. I'm going to Rotary tomorrow. So I'm on the whirlwind tour of meeting folks.
And
So that's
Grand
good.
Marshal of the Parade.
Grand Marshal of the Parade.
Last week.
Yeah, all kinds of stuff. And then I've been meeting with business owners off and on too. So I was able to meet with Jordan from Poor Choice. That was good to meet with him a couple different times actually. City Hall is going to be hosting the Rotary Club's quarterly blood drive in the Rose Room, July 20th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then we've been talking about maybe having that be a continual thing, quarterly, or I'm not sure what's going to happen with that. That's something that Amy's been working on. And then finally, I wanted to ask our Public Works Manager, Menjaldine, to provide us an update with the paving projects that'll be happening quickly here.
Oh, yes. Imminent.
Again, Menjaldine, Public Works Manager. As you guys all know, the pavement overlay project was scheduled to start on the 5th of July. We pushed it back ever so slightly. And the reason for that, it is going to start this week. The reason for that is that we found some additional concrete underneath the roadways along College Way, where the old highway is. So the team had to get some additional equipment for grinding that. It's not conventional equipment that can do it. So in effort to not start it and just leave the roadway a mess, we pushed it back a few days. So the door knockers are scheduled to go out tomorrow to all the residents, and we should start to see actual roadway work done starting by the end of this week. It's not that we're not working, we're working on other things in the background, but just to give you guys a heads up, we will push the roadway work that's happening here in front of City Hall to night work. That wasn't originally slated for that, but it just makes the most sense with that, along with the stuff that's coming off the Highway 80 into Old Town. So the work is going to start within the next couple of days, but all the door knockers and everything are starting to go out.
Just in time for the hot weather.
You know, it happened last year too, and I'm like, I cannot believe this is happening. The weather's been great up until this point. So, but we've got to get it done because we have that deadline of August 14th before school starts. And I see
That's
Councilmember Berlant looking at me. So
No. Are you ready? Yes. Thank you very much.
My
Mitchell.
pleasure.
Thank you.
That's all that I have.
Okay, great. And so at our next meeting, of course, we're going to have hopefully the lease agreement and then the contract for SB 1383 as well. So, yeah. Thank you very much, Mr. City Manager. I'll refer this now to council for City Council committee reports. I'm going to start over here. Mr. Holmes, do you have anything to report?
Yes, I do. I attended as the liaison with the Auburn Recreation District. I attended their board meeting last week. And I guess the significant thing that came out of that was that they have forwarded to the city their suggestions on the pickleball courts that are under development. So, and I guess those went to Jonathan. At least that's what I was told. So we may be moving forward on that very soon.
Thank you. Councilwoman Riddell Harris.
Yes, I haven't had any committee meetings because of the holiday for the most part, but I did get to attend a PCWA event out at their reservoirs to talk about fire health. And so we actually got to see a controlled burn. It was really interesting. The Forest Service was out there talking about what they're working on to not necessarily stop fires from happening, but to make sure that they're not burning to the the level that they get so hot that the fires can't come back from them. So PCWA has been doing a lot of work out there. They also talked a lot about the mosquito fire and how it all started and some of the road work that needs to be done. They actually have some roads closed out there because of all of the landslides and things that have happened because of that fire. So it was great to get to talk a little bit about that and find out a little bit more about all the work that's being done by them because everyone talks about carbon reduction. A big piece of that is the forest fires. And so they're trying to work really hard to make sure that we don't have those catastrophic fires.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you were able to go again this year. I know last year it was really educational and kind of a light bulb moment for me with regards to forest health and that connection. So good.
It's very interesting. Thanks.
All right. Anything else? Okay. Councilwoman Amara. Okay. Councilman Berland?
Yeah, thank you, Madam Mayor. I just want to echo how you started the meeting and thank the Chamber of Commerce for the 4th of July events. This is probably in my tenure, the first time that all 5 council members were involved in some way with the parade. And so I think that was an awesome way for us to support and the Chamber did an amazing job. And I really appreciate it. And I just want to close on this, the sponsors that helped make sure that free event and the free fireworks show was able to be done safely. And then I just want to end the hardest working people besides Jackie on the 4th of July were the public works crews, the police officers and our firefighters. They did an outstanding job transitioning very quickly to the parade, to doing traffic management for the fireworks show. And I hope I wasn't stuck in the traffic, but I hope that it paid off because they clearly put a lot of time and energy into traffic management following the 4th of July fireworks show. So thank you to our city employees.
Being in the traffic act afterwards, they did direct traffic in a different way than normal, and it was a lot faster than usual. So it was very much appreciated.
Excellent.
Missed the grease pole this year.
But I hear that they have someone who's willing to take on the games for next year in Old Town. Yeah. Auburn Hook and Ladder said that there is someone who stepped forward and they will be doing the games in Old Town.
Oh yeah, we didn't mention the pancake breakfast.
Yes,
It was
Auburn Hook
delicious
and Ladder.
as
As always. Absolutely. I was there. I'm sure you were probably there too. So. Excellent. All right. I just wanted to let folks know I am going to be traveling down to Newport Beach with the League of Cities Board of Directors. We have our next meeting down there. So I'll be down there on Thursday and Friday. I also just wanted to bring to the council's attention that the Placer County Planning Transportation Agency is exploring options to sell the Nevada Street Station. That's a building that actually Sparta owns and in conjunction with PCTPA, there's a relationship there, of course. But it's become financially difficult for PCTPA because they can't fill all the vacancies. And so then they have to raise their own rent in order to make the mortgage payments. So they feel like, their focus really shouldn't be on being a landlord. Really, it's providing, planning, transportation services and so forth. So they are exploring the option of selling. Like any other public agency, they'll have to go through the Surplus Property Act. So they are aware of that. And we did adopt a resolution for that. So just to let folks know that is something that's happening within the city limits. So we'll see what comes of that. So I think they still would like to be able to remain there, but just not have to have the onus of ownership and dealing with all the landlord issues with the small staff and so forth. Other than that, that's all that I have to report. We have Pioneer next week, and this week has been not as crazy with the holiday and so forth. So good. All right. Well, if there is no further comments or anything, I'm going to go ahead and without objection, I'll adjourn the meeting without no motion necessary. So without further ado, the meeting is hereby adjourned. Thank you.